So we're going to get started. I really appreciate everybody taking time out of the busy day. This is going to be, we're going to rush this through as quick as we can. We have about 60 minutes, so we're only going to be able to go into a certain level of depth into each one of these products. So just bear with us. This is going to give you a really good overview. We'll have questions at the end. We'd appreciate you hold them till the end, mainly because we have 4 products to cover with just such a short period of time. So welcome everybody. I'm John Anderson. I'm actually the West Coast rep. I cover the Western US, Western Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. Camila's here. She's inside sales. She covers part of California and Central South America, Mexico. And then Art, who's outside sales for basically a portion of California, and then again Central South America and Mexico. So just to give you a little bit of background. So this is a picture of BEA actually in Pittsburgh, where our home office is, just to give you a little bit of background on what the company is. We make a variety of sensors. So you can see we're the world's largest provider of sensors. So we do a tremendous amount of business in the automatic door, pedestrian door market. Go ahead, Camila. So the technologies we're going to talk about basically is initially the laser products, which are the LZR H100, the laser 8i30, and also the WIDESCAN. And then later on, obviously, the FALCON. Go ahead. So laser technology. So basically what you're going to find, all these use the same basic principle. So what you're going to have is actually what's called time of flight. If you're not familiar with the technology, it's very simple. It's basically measuring the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second. That light goes out and bounces back at the same rate. And what we're looking at is that rate as it goes out. If there's nothing in a predetermined field which we program, then the sensor doesn't see anything. If something enters it, whether it's a person, a dog, a forklift, for each one of the different sensors, that obviously changes that light return, and that's when they know there's something in that pattern. So go ahead, Camila. So the LZR H100 is basically, it is again a time of flight sensor. The sensor itself is made, the H just designates it's a horizontal sensor. So it's made to be mounted horizontally, which is different than the i30. We'll get into that in a minute. Go ahead, Camila. So the detection field layout, this sensor actually has 2 relays that are in the system. And the way it works is the fields actually are overlapping each other. So as the lasers leave the sensor itself, you have the patterns roughly about 3 inches thick. The further it goes out, the taller the pattern becomes. So at 20 feet, the pattern is going to be roughly about 24 inches tall. So it gives you a rough idea. You can see in this picture, so you have 2 different fields that it's showing. The green would typically designate where you would have an exit, and the red would obviously be the second relay, which is your safety field. Now, one thing that you'll notice in this drawing is it's showing the field actually in the pattern behind the barrier. This also can be very easily, the sensor can be mounted on the opposite side of the barrier case, and basically that allows it to actually see even under the arm, which makes the product even safer. It doesn't mean you can't mount it like this, but obviously with this product, there's a lot of options. Go ahead. So the sensor itself, the couple of key things we're going to go as quick as we can. The most important probably we run into is power. So realize if you look at the supply voltage, you have 10 to 35 volts DC. The 1.8 amps is strictly for about 1/4 of a second. And that's strictly to get the laser rotating at a high rate of speed. So that drops down to about a quarter of an amp once you go through that quarter of a second. So it's very important. You're easily able to power this off of most of the current gate operators that are manufactured today. Most of the circuit boards have a half amp accessory power that you can pull to power this sensor. You also can obviously just use a plug-in transformer. Typically, you're going to use at least a 1 amp. It could be a 12 volt, it could be a 24, but just remember, again, it has to be DC. Really the most important thing is making sure if you use a transformer, use a quality transformer. Don't just use something that happens to be in your vehicle, mainly because we're looking for something that's filtered and regulated, mainly because we don't want the voltage. The transformer says it's 24 volts, but it's really putting out 38 volts. That's what we don't want. That's just going to create problems down the road. The operating temperature you can see is 22 below zero all the way to 140 degrees. Pattern size is 32 by 32 feet. 2 relays, and obviously it's NEMA 4 IP65 rated. Now, to do that, that may be covered in this slide, but we'll cover it now. If you look at the bottom of the sensor, this is 2 pieces. So this bottom narrower portion is actually a second piece, which is the base. The base itself has when the two go together, if you look at the bottom of the laser, it actually has a cover that snaps on over the electrical connection. So it's absolute critical, again, when you plug the wiring harness into the base of the sensor, that you do plug that plastic cover on, and it has to snap. If that for some reason isn't plugged in properly, water can possibly infiltrate that and get up into the sensor and create problems. So just be aware of that. Be very careful when you plug that plastic cover on, because that's what upholds that NEMA and IP rating. Go ahead. So this just shows, the options of what you can do. Again, being able to do a 32 by 32 foot pattern. And again, remember, one field has nothing to do with the other. You can make one 8 by 8 and one 32 by 32. They're completely independent of how they're programmed. So the middle slide is showing object filtering. So what you're able to do is actually, by looking at a couple of different items, really what we look at is literally its volume or size. So if I want to filter out a person, I can basically say, let's say this guy walking through here, we'll just use a number that 15 lasers hit him. What we do is we increase the size where there would have to be 30 or 40 hit him in order to recognize that person. Therefore, it basically will discriminate and not see him as he's walking through the pattern. This is only, you have the ability to do this only on relay 1, which is your exit. The safety field, you cannot program out people, and it's really due to safety. So if you have this on a barrier, you have it on a slide gate, and there's an opportunity where somebody could get trapped by the gate, we want to be able to see that person. So that makes it really safe. Basically, you can see on the last slide, rather, is the 2 relay outputs. So you have independent detection for motion and presence. Go ahead, Camila. So the things you can do is, you look at the first slide on the left, you notice there's cross traffic detection. So you can actually filter out where basically, as that vehicle is traveling down that road, that field, if it were sticking out in the roadway, would ignore that person. You can make it where it's only going to visually see, as you see in the middle slide, that vehicle's turning in. That's when it would recognize that vehicle. Otherwise, if it just drives past, it's just going to ignore it. The last one is the ease of install. So there's 2 ways really to adjust the fields or the patterns. Each one, again, is independent, and you can do it either using on the remote, which our remote programs any BEA sensor that we manufacture. So basically, you have the ability to program in using A, B, C, and D on the remote, which one is, each one or so A and B are width and length of relay 1, C and D are width and length of relay 2. That's one way to program this in. So if I want a 10 by 10 loop, and I can push A and B and program in 10 by 10. If you don't want to do that, and there are opportunities or applications where you are going to use a teach-in where you walk the pattern, and that's what this is really showing. So when I typically use this is more when I have I don't want the pattern at 90 degrees. Maybe I have a curved driveway and I don't want the pattern to go where he's walking now down the sidewalk. If that pattern turned, I wouldn't want the pattern up in the landscaping. So at that point, I would walk the pattern and have it stop exactly where that walkway was. So that is really the beauty of this. Go ahead. So it's basically, as you can tell, it's a non-contact sensor for pedestrian vehicles. It's ideal where loop cutting is prohibitive or restrictive. So that could be a brand new driveway where the dealer gets the call and he's unable to go out and pre-install a loop underneath before they pave or before they put new concrete in. You a lot of times have, especially in parking structures, you may have pre-stressed concrete where you're not able to, because structurally that's part of the building, you're not able to saw cut that because it basically could damage the structure itself. So that's really a great application. So you have slide and swing. We're showing barriers. We're showing toll gates, parking facilities. Anywhere where you're really looking for closer proximity protection, particularly again under the barrier. You see, we can see underneath the arm in the picture on the upper right. So that's all really, really important. One thing that is very unique, the middle picture, you can't see a ton of detail, but this particular job, these gates were actually, you can see the property or where the gravel and rocks are on the left-hand side actually fell away quite drastically. When these gates were open, we actually mounted the sensor where it would shoot underneath the leaf on the left-hand side. So as it opened, it went over the top of the sensor, created a giant shadow loop in here. And again, they just paved this new driveway and did not want to saw cut it. So it was a great opportunity. So that gives you just some basic examples, because the product has a lot of applications. It's very unique in what you can do with it. Go ahead, Camila. So this gives you obviously what you encounter in the field with a lot of loops that you go out and maybe service. You obviously have a poor job of sealing. You have cracked asphalt. If any of you have gone on job sites, you can obviously see sites where the asphalt is so deteriorated that in essence what you'd have if you saw cut that property, even if you re-saw cut this one, the picture in the middle, as soon as a truck went over there with any weight, it would actually just collapse that saw cut and it would obviously damage the loop. So it gives you an idea there. The one you can see on here, just, we get a lot of questions about how weatherproof is this, or is it affected by rain or snow? I've had dealers take and pour a 5-gallon bucket, a Home Depot bucket of water on it, and then pour sand and gravel all over the lens, and it still functions. So when you see the lens on the left, it just shows you, even with that much coverage of the lens, it still functions. Now, you look at the lower picture where it's in the snow in the middle. Obviously, if that snow was 5 feet deep and the sensor was buried, obviously it can't function because it's just completely buried. But it gives you an idea that, if the snow gets that deep, obviously they're going to be plowing the driveway, and at that point they would brush off the lens with a small broom or a rag, and it would be back and functioning like normal. Go ahead. So this just shows an example of, obviously, again, there's a lot of flexibility with this product. You look at this and it's mounted, the sensor is mounted in a bollard. Now, you don't obviously have to do that. You could put a 2x2 post, a 3x3, 4x4, whatever you want. It's just the bollard just offers extra protection so the sensor is not damaged by somebody, let's say a landscaper with a weed eater. He doesn't hit it with a weed eater. So it just offers extra protection. So you can see it again here on the mounting it directly to the chassis. These are some door king barriers, of course. There's no specific size or place where you mount this. As you can see the picture on the right, it is mounted on the outside corner of the barrier. So as you're approaching that, it's, you know, you want to make sure if you can is obviously mount it where it's going to be, it'll allow coverage even underneath the arm, not just in front of the arm. It just makes a big difference. This is a site, it's a large site actually in Sacramento. This particular site has actually 3 H100s on it. It's one's looking backwards as an exit, one's looking forward as a shadow, and there's one on the outside, or the outside of the property rather, that's acts as a safety. So very, very useful. Go ahead. So this is a particular, again, we get a lot of calls for unusual applications. This is a property in Palm Springs where they have a small lake with a waterway that goes inside the hotel, and they're using it for these sliding doors to sense that boat is in the path so the doors don't close on the boat. So there's a video showing what it does.
Okay, I think we went through the end of the H100.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So right now we're going to be talking about the LZR I30. The first things that you might be noticing is that the housing is the same. Actually, the I30 is an older sensor than the H100, has been out in the field for at least 15 years, which is very interesting and good to us because we get to see some really old sensors that are being installed for like 8 to 10 years and they're still functioning. So it's always good to mention that out. Again, it uses the same technology as the H100, so we're still talking about the laser scanner for industrial doors. Now, there is a main difference, and the main difference will be the installation. The main idea is to mount this and looking down, so it's gonna be a vertical curtain that is gonna be protecting doors, gates, and much more. So as you can see on the picture here, we have it installed on the corner right, even though it can be installed on the left or the right side. And all you're gonna be getting is 2 curtains of time-of-flight technology, and you will also have 2 relays. So you can program them independently, and you can do a lot of things with this, but the main thing is to provide safety. Now, as you can see, these offer a full curtain of safety, which we like. It goes all the way up to 32 by 32 feet, and you can adjust it depending on your needs. So the good thing about this is that there is no areas of no coverage, as you can see there. Anything that will be in the area or entering this safety zone is going to be detected. So that's something that we always like to mention, because it's going to be the most safety you're going to be getting on any application. So moving with this, I'm going to show you a video here. You just can see how the sensor it's installed. You will see the housing and how that will be going on a corner looking down. So there you'll be able to see one of the cool things that you can do with this is, because we mentioned we do have 2 independent relays, in some instances you can make a virtual push plate, which means that you can just design one area on the full opening where you want that to be your activation. So because it's independent, it's going to allow you to have that, but also protect the door on the rest of the area. So that is something very interesting you can do with this. And she's kind of like showing what's going on. So we're still protecting the door, but we're also able to activate it within the same sensor. So 2 independent relays. So that just gives you an overview of what the sensor does. In terms of the main difference between the H100 and the I30, you can see it here. Well, on the H100, that was a vertical. This is going to be an horizontal. Now we're going to be talking about an I30 being a vertical curtain. You still have the same amount of curtains and the maximum detection field is the same, just the application is going to be different. So that is the main difference between the two of them, but technology is the same. So in the same areas where you were able to use the H100, you can use the I30. So you don't have to worry about the weather. You don't have to worry about that kind of solar interference that you might see with some other sensors. So some of the advantages, obviously, that we do have, we can cover a big area. So the I30 covers 32 by 32. We do also have another version which uses the same technology, the same housing, which can give you 25 meters, which is like 80 feet by 80 feet. So that's usually for bigger openings. But for the most part, the I30 will be helping you on the most applications. Now, the high resolution, I mean, you have a full coverage. You can see on the pictures where we list the, you can see like a red area. That's kind of like for you to have an idea what the coverage is gonna look. It's being used on different applications, and that's gonna depend on what you're gonna be doing. But at the end of the day, you only have 2 relays. So what you wanna do with that, it's up to you. You can use it for safety, but you can also use the relay to turn on a light. So you can tell the other side that someone is approaching the door. So I think that the flexibility that those 2 independent relays gives you can help on a wide variety of applications. And we continue to see that as customers continue to challenge us with different applications and things that they wanna do. So at the end of the day, I want you to think of us as a solution provider. If you have some application that might be a little bit complicated and you're not sure what might work, you can always reach out to Encon and they can assist you further for more details on what we can do. I know that they're really good at that, so we really appreciate it. But there is much more than just safety. So if you ever have something that you're not sure how to do, they might be able to provide you with what you can do. So in this sense, the interesting thing about the I30 is that you don't need alignment. So there is not an emitter and a receiver that you actually physically have to connect. So the sensors will be doing that for you. So you don't have to worry that maybe one of the meters move and now it's not making contact. Like this sensor is gonna be moving the curtains within itself, and it's going to be doing the calculations internally. So you basically have a curtain that is moving with your sensor. Obviously, your sensor is going to be installed, so it's not going to be moving. It's going to be within it. So some of the applications that we are seeing where you can use this is barrier arms and gates, any kinds of safety perimeters and platform screens. I know that that might be more on some of our global markets, but that is something that you can do. So we always like to mention that it's very, very flexible on where you can use it. So just think as this sensor as a good option when you are trying to detect something. And obviously the margin of error is always related to installation, and we always recommend you to walk test before you leave any job site. That always helps, and that will be with any sensor, to be honest. So right now, I know that we talked on the video that we made, it was more like an animation and it looked great in theory, but now we want to show you what do we really can do with this. So like this is gonna illustrate the virtual push plate that we took and how you can also see on, let me see. So he's gonna start trying to touch. It's not doing it because it's not there. It's in the middle. As the sensor found him, the door went up. So we use one of the relays for that. Now, obviously, we also want to protect the door, so the other relay will be designed for the full coverage of the door, and you just want safety, meaning if the door is moving, you don't want that to close on someone or something, and that's what he's doing. So you can see like actually how that is working, and I think that that gives a really good representation of what the sensor can do, and you can see there how the sensor is detecting him. Now it's on detection now that it changed the color, and now the door is going up. So I just like to share this as it gives you a feeling of what that's gonna do on the field, what are they gonna be getting once they're installing this sensor. So that's just something there. In terms of applications, we mentioned where you can have like on tools, high-speed doors of all types. But moving forward for something that might be outside of the door, you can use it for safety perimeter. And because we do have such a big coverage, that's something that you can do. You can tie that up to a different kind of system, alarm system, and so much more. So again, 2 relays. So over here, we're also talking about safety perimeter, and this might not be something that you might do, but it is just something good to mention as we are talking. It has been used on museums, and you can have 2 sort of detections like day and night mode. We're using a relay to do that, but at the end of the day, you're just covering a certain area. So with that said, we already covered the I-30, and I'm gonna let my teammate present the WIDESCAN. So Art, this is all yours.
Thanks, Camila. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit about the WIDESCAN. The WIDESCAN is primarily targeted for industrial doors, and the way we label industrial doors are in industrial environments, that being high-speed doors, overhead doors, rolling grill doors, mechanical doors, among many others. So it's a wide array of different sorts of openings and entrance systems throughout an industrial environment. With that being said, if you guys notice, we've kind of in the last couple of slides been talking about laser products, whether it's the H100 or the I-30, and you can see how some of them are deploying laser-based curtains, whether that's in a horizontal and vertical fashion. Well, the WIDESCAN is also laser-based, but it's overhead, so that means that it's looking from the top down, and it deploys 7 volumetric curtains, or better yet, 7 laser-based curtains, that creates a volumetric pattern. There are some distinct advantages behind that, which we'll talk about a little bit in the following slides. So the sensor exercises 3 functions. Among them, that's activation in green, object presence in yellow, and human safety in red. So these are what we refer to as the 3 primary functions. Therefore, the sensor has 3 relays. Then we have an additional features that are the virtual pull core, the motion speed, and the height trigger. These are what we call the added value features, meaning that they are designed to enhance the performance of a certain property or field, that being the activation circuit. If we look at the scope of activation, it enables us to discriminate, that is to say, not see people, ignore people, and only see the selective traffic that we are trying to target, whether that is a forklift in an industrial environment or whether that's a vehicle in a rolling steel gate. Object presence is a safety measure that provides us presence in a considerable distance from the face of the gate or the door. Human safety are the curtains in the closest proximity to the face of the gate or door. I mean, that is to say, in the danger zone. So as a result of that, that property or field is designed to protect people or any object that are in close proximity to the danger zone. So again, we have the primary and the added value features. So here we can kind of further articulate a little bit more amongst the 3 main features that the WIDESCAN features. And that being motion, we have the ability to use the entire volumetric pattern just for discrimination in an activation circuit. It has directionality, meaning that we could look for unidirectional motion, that is to say motion exclusively in the orientation of the gate or door, or bidirectional traffic, meaning that it's picking up motion as vehicles are entering the door or driving away from the door. It also has the ability to discriminate cross traffic. Object presence is a form of safety. It's tend to create a contingency effect of, an opening is triggered by a loop detector, by a pull cord, or any kind of other alternative opening circuit, in addition to a motion sensor. What may often occur is that the high-speed door may be coming down, and potentially the forklift can impact with the door. This tends to be fairly popular to the extent that a lot of the high-speed doors now are auto-repairable. So the nice thing about the object presence, which is actually the only, among the only few sensors that deploy safety presence from a considerable depth from the face of the door or gate, is that it'll react and it'll reopen the door or keep the door open in the event that it sees presence in that field. The human safety, we can appreciate the image here of how the first two curtains in the closest proximity to the face of the gate or door are being used to protect in the danger zone. Most of the safety accessories that we see throughout the marketplace, whether they're BEA or not, tend to be centric around the proximity of the danger zone. That is to say, where the doors opening and closing. So coming back to the yellow zone, one of the main value propositions there is that, we have safety at a considerable distance from the face of the door. And to further add, to minimize any false nuances that can potentially keep your gate or door open, you can add a high trigger, which we'll talk a little bit later, which will discriminate and only detect presence based on a certain height requirement. So altogether, fundamentally, these are the three main features that the WIDESCAN can exercise, that being motion, presence, and safety, and therefore has three relays assigned to these three logics. They're fully assignable. That is to say, if you only need motion and safety, then you could just land two relays. If you just need motion and presence, then you could just land those two relays. If you just need motion, then you land one relay. Or if you just need presence for a dot where you're going to trigger a traffic light, then you could just use the relay that corresponds to your yellow presence field size. So it's completely assignable in the extent of how you want to use it. The WIDESCAN has a distinct feature, which is the virtual pull cord. The virtual pull cord is certainly being well received by the marketplace in today's environment, where we're living in a pandemic environment and everything needs to be touchless or contact free. So, different facility managers are envisioning the way their entrance systems are being exercised and how they can minimize a contact environment and go contactless. So the virtual pull cord goes with that vision, and the nice advantage of the virtual pull cord is you can create up to 3 of them anywhere in the volumetric pattern field size. And so when a forklift approaches, he makes a brief, what I call California stop sign, a brief stop. The sensor sees that stop and it triggers an activation pulse. You could set that delay time on the virtual pull cord anywhere between half a second up to 8 seconds. And the purpose of this video, it's 3 seconds. So that is to say, somebody just walks through it, it will not trigger an activation. But if that person stands over that blue spot for 3 seconds, it will trigger an activation. So there's a nice advantage between that, because oftentimes you might have an environment, particularly in an industrial environment, where 60% of your traffic circulation are forklifts, and another 40% are people pulling jacks and things like that. pulling boxes, among many other different examples. So you can use your activation circuit for the sensor to automate the door and discriminate people. And then you can use a virtual pull cord for the people pulling boxes or pulling pallet jacks. You can mark an X on the floor or a circle with adhesive tape. And now that individual knows that if he stands on that X for 3 seconds, the door will open. So it does give you quite a bit of versatility in the way it operates. A couple additional features are, again, the high trigger. The high trigger can be used in both the activation circuit or the object presence. It cannot be used on the human safety for obvious reasons. That is to protect safety for people or any kind of environment that's in the close proximity of the danger zone. But the patterns that are further away from the face of the door, that being the motion and the object presence, we do have the ability to not only discriminate based on height, but also discriminate not just based on width, but also discriminate based on height. And that is the advantage of the volumetric pattern, because on the H100, we're discriminating primarily based on the motion and the width, the object size of the width. Whereas in contrast, because this sensor is mounted from top down, we can not only just discriminate based on the width and the motion, but we can also add a height trigger that enables us to discriminate based on height. So this is often appreciated, say for example, where you're using object presence on a dock and you have a big rig backing up and you want to trigger that traffic light from green to red once it's perfectly stationed. Well, you can add an object presence, which will keep your relay energized, which means your traffic light will permanently stay red as long as the big rig is stationed there. And then in addition to that, we could use the high trigger so it doesn't just pick up anybody, but rather it picks up the characteristic or the height of a big rig. The one on the right-hand side is the motion speed trigger. And so that just allows us to continue to improve or enhance the performance of how we discriminate or filter to not see people. So, many of us are accustomed to the FALCON, and FALCON is a microwave motion sensor for high-speed doors, and that discriminates based on the principle of mass. So the unique advantage of the WIDESCAN is we can discriminate based on the width, on the height, but not just limited to the scope of that. We can also add a motion speed trigger. So that is to say that, any motion that occurs at 3 miles per hour or less, it'll see. Anything greater than 3 miles, it'll ignore. And you could select it anywhere between 3 to 12 to 18. I'm not sure quite up to what it goes to, but there are some programmable fields that can be set in terms of the motion speed to further improve the reliability factor on the discrimination on the filter. And then this here just kind of gives us a full, well-rounded understanding of how these different sorts of properties that are available on the WIDESCAN, whether that's motion, object presence, human safety, virtual pull cord, high trigger, and how they're tied to different applications, whether they're vehicle access control, entrance systems, industrial environment, cold storage facilities, how we can really leverage, and how this product is really well-rounded, complete in terms of the features that it exercises to link and bring value propositions or solutions to different sorts of applications. And so this right here is just an illustrative concept that gives us a well-rounded understanding of how complete this product is and how we could leverage it in a wide area of different sorts of applications. These are some of the applications, just to give you guys a visual illustration of how some of these WIDESCAN can be used. This is on a high-speed door on the frame to the entrance, mounted on the left center side. So an important observation that's worth noting is the WIDESCAN can primarily be mounted whether that's center or on the left-hand side. Sometimes it's much more encouraged to mount on the left-hand side, the spinning mirror, and the way it deploys the curtain, and enables us to maximize a much more better preferred field pattern from the left side, but nonetheless, we could also mount it on the center and still guaranteed a similar, if not enhanced performance as well. The only limitation that's not encouraged is to mount it on the right-hand side, and that's just primarily based on the principle of how the mirrors are spinning as it's deploying or outputting the volumetric currents. Here we could see it on an overhead door. We can appreciate how it's mounted on the left-hand side. We have an industrial bracket that extends the sensor out. Evidently, we don't want the sensor to be mounted where it's subjective to seeing a stationary object that can potentially obstruct the field pattern, or dynamic environments where you have fans or moving objects that could potentially, one way or another, create nuances or false detections for the sensor. With that being said, the sensor is very reliable. It's NEMA 4 IP65 rated like the rest of the laser family product line. That is to say, it could operate in cold storage environments, it could operate in outdoor environments, sun, light conditions, raining conditions, I should say, accumulation of water, dust. Does not have an effect on the behavior or the performance of the laser scanner.
Okay, thank you, Art. So now we are going to be overviewing the last product that we were presenting, and in order to start talking about it, I want to talk about the microwave technology and how this works. So this basically works under the Doppler effect principle, where some microwave are being sent and they are bouncing back. As an object is approaching this microwave technology, as microwave waves, there is going to be a change in the size, and we can get detection out of this. One of the cool things about this kind of technology is that it can see speed, size, and direction of the object. So we are able to utilize that to do some adjustments to what you want to detect. Now, talking about this technology, this is a technology is very old. It's really, really old. BEA started as a company that was using this technology. So we have been working with microwave technology for over 50 years. So there's nothing much more to add on this. It's very reliable, has been there forever, and it's interesting now because now I'm going to be talking about the FALCON, which is a sensor that uses this technology, and probably this is one of the most representative over the years sensors that we have sold. It's funny, some people might recognize our brand because they've used the FALCON so much. So on this, probably you already use it. But for who hasn't, this is a motion sensor for industrial doors, gates, and much more. As we mentioned before, we do have some relays here, and you can use it for something else. So you can send some warning indications on your warehouse and much more. But at the end of the day, it's just looking for moving objects going towards the door and towards the sensor. Excuse me. So here we're just gonna see an overview of this sensor. So the housing might sound familiar. They have been installed all over the country and working fine on any sort of climate and environment. So the blue area is what we represent the microwave, which means the opening of the door. So it's going to be opening as long as the object is going towards the door. Now, as I mentioned before, we can reject the trajectory of the objects that are going there. So that is pretty cool. And in this case, for example, we are able to discriminate people. Now, if you want them to activate the door, that's fine. That's something you can do. But for the most part, what we see is that usually right next to a high-speed door, you have a main door. So you don't want to have unnecessary cycles on your door, and you actually want your employees to be using the door that is designed for people. So in those cases, that filter comes very handy, and I think that those are one of the most common things that you will be using from this sensor, at least on the features. So just reviewing quickly here in terms of features and benefits, you can reject pedestrian, people, and power traffic, as we saw in the video. So it just helps the door to open only when it's needed. So it's just like decreasing the unnecessary cycles, especially if you want to keep your temperature control and making sure that the door is not opening and keeping all this air conditioning out and just working extra hard on your AC. So I would say AC more over there because you're in California, so probably you have nicer weather than we do here. But on Pittsburgh, for example, that would be more on the other side when in winter is like very cold outside. You don't want to lose your heat. But that's just how you see it. But on any case, it's just making sure your door is not opening when it doesn't have to. Now you have some settings that you can use, obviously, to maximize that, as we spoke before. The main thing on this is that it's also NEMA 4 rated, and that's really good for very harsh environments. And I think that that's something that you might be seeing more. Now, as a spin-off of this sensor that we're talking now, we do have something that is explosion-proof enclosure available. So it's the FALCON EX. Might not be as common because usually the standard FALCON will do it for most applications, but for anything where the explosion-proof is needed, that's something that we also have, and it's going to give you the same reliable activation as you will see on a regular FALCON. So in terms of power supply, this is very, very standard. I mean, it's anywhere from 12 to 24 AC or DC power, which you can get out of your operator. That's usually not a problem. And then in terms of the temperatures, it goes all the way from -22 Fahrenheit to up to 140. It might not be something that you will be seeing on regular applications in California, usually sunny, but if you have some kind of freezer application, something where you need to control the temperature, this is going to be what you're going to see. Now, we've seen it installed on some other areas where it goes even below the -22, but in terms of what we recommend, that would be the temperature that we suggest you to have. So with that said, you will see here some of the applications. You can use it on high-speed doors. Then we see like some parking structures where you just need free exit. And then on the other side, you see some applications that are more like related to mining and things where you need to have the explosion-proof enclosure for sure. So varieties are, I mean, you've been seeing used in like many places, and I think that it's one of the sensors that people knows them a lot from us. So in terms of the flavors, we do have some different kind of FALCONs, and that's gonna depend on the kind of application you have. So we do have the FALCON and the FALCON Wide. The FALCON Wide is more for doors that will be wider in dimension. So you want to have activation on the full opening. So you need, so someone is like on the left or the right, they gotta have the same kind of access to activate the door. So we have those in terms of like what you can do. And they go from 11.5 feet both. Now, the regular FALCON can be mounted up to 23 feet versus 21 on the wide, but I mean, it's been used on different places, indoor, outdoor applications, parking lots, gates, and different places with like random traffic and changing temperature backgrounds. Now, the XL can be mounted on the same places. Now, the difference is that it's a lawn mounting. And I think that we see that more with parking structures where you don't have all the way to go up. So you cannot mount a FALCON because you're not gonna be able to get the 11.5 feet. But for anything that is 6.5 up to 11.5, the FALCON XL will be the best option for you. And I know that the Encon is selling all of them. So you can take a look into their website. They have that information there. And finally, obviously, we do have the explosion proof, where you do have the same options in terms of having where you're going to be able to mount it, but it's just for these particular applications they need class 1 or division 1 specifications. So if you need one of those, you probably will know because it will spec that particular characteristic of the sensor. So that's kind of like what we have in terms of the flavors. Now, we talk about having a FALCON XL, and a wide. And you will have some options in terms of some tilting angles and give you some flexibility so your pattern can be bigger or smaller as you need. And this is just gives you a representation of how the pattern is going to look, where the activation is going to be. So you will see here that let's say on the Y you can get all the way to 7 to 18 feet and versus like the regular one that it's upstairs. Like for the most part, the regular Falcon is going to do it for most applications. It's just like knowing how big your opening is going to be, and that is available on the cut sheet. So if you're not sure, again, the guys at Encon are pretty good at that, and they can send you the information there so you can decide which one is the best for you. If you're not sure, I always say please call, because that way you are going to your job site and you feel much more confident that you are going with the sensor that you actually need. So that's usually not too hard. And now the mounting height, we always like to say that what not to do. That's a picture over there. It's like what not to do ever. This sensor has to be mounted on the middle of the opening, usually looking down. There is like some accessories in case that you do have some posts or something like that where you can have a bracket, but please don't do it on the corner. If at one point you cannot mount it on the middle of the opening, please check the WIDESCAN, because that's going to give you the flexibility that you need. So that is just something to consider. And obviously, the activation is going to be going directly proportionally to where you have your sensor. So that's gonna make, at the end of the day, give you the ability to do all that you need to do. So you're going towards the sensor, and it just gotta make sure that there is no obstructions presented. Like in this case, the sensor is not only mounted on the wrong side, but you also have the goalpost. So just make sure you check that before. Sometimes you will be installing the sensor and you're not sure what you're going to be getting. So if you call Encon, they might be asking you some questions sometimes just to decide what's the best sensor for you, or if you're going to be needing some bracket. But those are things that we always like to mention. I mean, I think that this sensor, it's pretty self-explanatory. It only provides activation, so there is no safety. Sometimes what we have seen in terms of combination, if you want to add safety, we'll be adding a 930 and a Falcon, and that will give you safety and activation for your door. But the Falcon itself is just going to be looking for movement, going towards the sensor, and then that's all it's going to do. So it's going to be opening your door. That's all you can do with the Falcon. But then if you want to do something else, meaning you want to translate that pulse that the sensor is sending you on the relays that we do have, it can be different things like letting the other side know, turn an alert, whether that's visual on a light or whether that's something that you're gonna have an audible alert on the other side. So you can tell them, hey, there's someone approaching the door. That's something you can do. So I think that this sensor, it's very flexible, and that's what you are getting. So for any further question, anything that we haven't covered, please feel to review the documents. Everything is on Encon's website, or reach out directly to them. So I think with this, we have come to the end of the presentations, and this is the area where we're going to be taking questions. I saw here 2 seconds. We might have, okay, so we have questions. John, you mentioned the LZR H100 can drop up to 1.8 amps during startup, but 1 amp power supply is sufficient. Is that correct?
Yes. So great question, Lamar. So that spike in power, Lamar, is actually such a short period of time that, again, it will not, again, we have people power them off a 500 milliamp or a half an amp accessory power source, and it does not create an issue. Now, I will, Lamar, just not picking on Door King, but like on your DC machine, just be aware, unless you've changed them, the newer DC stuff, I think we had an issue with one, and I believe the accessory power was only 250 milliamps. And really, and it was a very unique application actually, because they were using 3 of these, and it overtaxed that accessory power. But to answer your question, yes, a 1 amp power supply is plenty to power up one of these. You could even do 2. I've had guys use 1, but Encon sells a 2 amp. If you're going to do 2 or 3 of these sensors, it's not a bad idea. Just, you're never going to hear anybody have a problem because they use too much transformer. You're always going to have an issue when they don't use sufficient transformers. So yes, please use plenty of power, because that's cheap if you have to keep going back. So
Okay.
and while Camila, real quick, I just wanted to just make a couple last comments, and one of them is you can tell by the presentation, and thanks Camila and Art, you guys did a fantastic job, but you can see we can't cover everything these sensors will do and where you can use them. The one example I use particularly for automatic gates is we see a lot of applications where, especially swing gates mounted in the center of a column, as they open, they create an entrapment zone. And that's not really easy for anyone to address, short of pulling the gates off and mounting them in the back of the column. So the perfect example is, you can see we have a vast array of sensors. You could use an I-30. You could use any of our sensors that sense presence. You basically could do a lot of different things with these sensors. With that, you're going to find very, very unique applications. But again, just for safety wise, because really, again, this all boils down to, we don't want small children, especially, or adults, hurt or killed inside of an automatic gate or barrier. So, keep in mind, again, that it's not an exact science. This is very flexible in how this product works. But, again, for application questions, please, reach out to the guys at Encon. If they're not sure, they can absolutely just give us a shout. We answer the phone anytime, and, we'll definitely get you out of a bind. If somebody's out in the field and Encon's closed, call my cell number. I'll give you my cell. You can call me anytime, because the whole idea is anybody can sell you a sensor, but we want you to be able to support it when your customers are down and are counting on you as an installer. So you can, I can give you my number now. You can write it down. It's 412-735-3621. Or you can just contact me after this, and then I'll get you the information. But that's the easiest way. Just get a hold of me. I can help you with any of the sensors, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so we have a few more comments over here. Let's say hi to Bob. Bob is with High Security, and he said that all of these products are amazing. However, I missed a portion on the LZR H100, and I'm curious if UL 325 certification has been reached for use as an approved external entrapment protection device. If not, what is the time frame from this for this certification? I think John.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So Lamar, really good question again. So basically, we're in the process of having the H100 UL approved as a monitor device. Currently, it is monitored, but it's not approved as a monitor device, which is obviously running it through UL. It's quite intensive, the process to actually get this done. So right now, I've actually sent an email already to our headquarters to get updates. And Mark, if you have something, let me know. But I sent it to Jeff Dunham, he's really in charge of our safety and standards portion of BEA. So as soon as I hear something, I can let everybody know. But right now, no, it's not approved. You'll still need to use, obviously, whatever monitor device that you typically use for edges and photo eyes. But this really is obviously just going to give you a lot more coverage and an opportunity, again, to keep people safe in an automatic gate.
Right, and I think adding to John's comment also is also make sure that you can exceed the code. Like, as long as you know who is going towards that, whether that's people or knowing what it's going through those doors. It can be like really expensive material that you want to protect. So I guess just like knowing what it's going to be there and just making sure that you can exceed the codes, why not? We always embrace that as an option. So let me see, Bob. Okay, so Bob had another comment, but that just was more like a thank you to John. He said that he sees this as a real game changer when it gets there. So, and then Lemera also, we already talked about the 1.8 amps. He said that he wouldn't suggest powering off of any of their boards. So I think that's just more like a comment. And I believe that we are good with all the questions. I don't know if anyone out there does have any further or additional questions that they might have not asked on the question and answer board, but now is the time. So we're gonna give you 30 seconds. Anyone is welcome to have any comments, questions. We're here still. Nope. I think we're good. Okay, so with this said, well, in name of BEA, we really wanted to thank you for taking the time to join us today. To Encon as well for organizing this, because I know that there is a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't see. We only are here for an hour, but I know that Encon is working on making this happen, and I know that it takes a lot of teamwork, and we really appreciate everyone here for all the help. And as we mentioned before, also Encon does a great job at providing support. So if there's any questions you might have moving forward, they will be able also to help you out. So I think that these are my last words here. I don't know if someone else has anything to add.
I would like to just say thank you to all of the attendees, and especially thank you to everyone from BEA for our very first webinar in a series that's going to start every Wednesday for the next few months. And BEA really knocked it out of the park for the very first one for us. We appreciate the time and the effort you put into this. And a big thank you to everyone who joined us for this, obviously. You know, it's something new for all of us. It's a new world, so here we go. We're gonna do what we can, and you know, obviously Encon is here to help you get these products and make sure that you're getting the correct product, and we will work with BEA to make sure that, you know, all your questions are answered and we can safely take care of your gates, doors, etc. Thank you very much for your time and your attendance.